In a tale that blurs the lines between history, reincarnation, and the mysteries of ancient Egypt, we dive into the fascinating life of Dorothy Eady, better known as Seti. Her story is unlike any other. A British girl who, after a near-fatal accident, believed she had lived a previous life in ancient Egypt. What started as childhood dreams evolved into a lifetime of research, remarkable discoveries, and shocking revelations about the hidden secrets of ancient Egypt. Could Seti's experiences provide a window into the past? Let's uncover her extraordinary story. Dorothy Louise Eady was born in 1904 in a quiet suburb of London to a middle-class family. She was a happy, lively child, doted upon by her parents, Reuben and Caroline Eady, who saw in her the promise of a bright future. Her early years were unremarkable, filled with the small joys and adventures of childhood, like exploring her neighborhood, learning to read, and enjoying the simple comforts of a loving home. But at the tender age of 3, Dorothy's life and the lives of her parents would change forever in ways no one could have predicted. One fateful day, Dorothy suffered a catastrophic accident that left her family reeling. While playing on the stairs of their home, she tripped and fell down a long flight, landing hard at the bottom. The fall was severe enough that when her parents rushed to her side, they found her limp and unresponsive. Panic-stricken, they called for a doctor who, upon arriving and examining her, could do little but confirm their worst fears. Dorothy was gone. Her parents were inconsolable. Her small lifeless body was carried to her bed, and arrangements began for what they believed would be her final rites. As they sat in stunned grief, mourning the unthinkable, something miraculous happened. Without warning, Dorothy began to stir. Her tiny chest rose and fell, and she let out a small cry before opening her eyes. The family's mourning turned into a rush of joy and relief as they embraced their daughter, seemingly brought back from the brink of death. The doctor was baffled. There was no medical explanation for what had occurred. To her family, it was nothing short of a miracle. But Dorothy's revival came with profound changes. It wasn't long before her parents noticed that their once carefree child was no longer the same. Dorothy seemed quieter, more introspective. Her laughter, once a constant presence in the house, was now punctuated by moments of deep thoughtfulness. And then came the memories, or rather, the fragments of a life that wasn't hers. At first, Dorothy began speaking of a home that was not her London residence. "I want to go home," she would say, often crying inconsolably. But when her parents tried to soothe her, she would insist that her home was far away in a land of big houses with no roofs, surrounded by tall, swaying palm trees. This land, she claimed, had sand everywhere and a warm sun that felt nothing like London's chilly skies. Her parents were confused, assuming these were just the imaginative ramblings of a recovering child. But the descriptions became more vivid and specific. Dorothy began drawing pictures of what she described. These were not the scribbles of a typical 3-year-old. They were intricate depictions of ancient buildings, adorned with columns and strange symbols. She also began speaking words her parents did not recognize, words that bore no resemblance to English. When asked what she was saying, Dorothy replied confidently that she was speaking the language of my home. Her parents were baffled and increasingly concerned. Things took an even stranger turn during a family outing to the British Museum. Reuben and Caroline hoped the trip would cheer their daughter, who had become preoccupied with her mysterious home and often seemed distant. But when they reached the Egyptian room, Dorothy froze. Her small body stiffened and her eyes widened in what could only be described as recognition. She stood silently for a moment before running toward the statues and artifacts, her tiny hands reaching out as if to touch them. To the shock of onlookers, she fell to her knees before a statue, tears streaming down her face. "These are my people," she cried, her voice breaking with emotion. "I want to go home. Why did you take me away from my people?" The museum goers and staff looked on in stunned silence as Dorothy wept uncontrollably, clinging to the glass cases that held relics of ancient Egypt. Her parents, mortified and bewildered, struggled to calm her. "Dorothy," her mother whispered urgently, "what are you talking about?" But Dorothy was inconsolable. She pointed to a display of mummies and said, "These are my friends. I knew them when I was alive." After that visit, Dorothy's obsession with Egypt deepened. She began insisting that she had once lived there, in a time long before the modern world. She claimed to remember her name, Bentreshit, and described her life as a young girl dedicated to the temple of Pharaoh Seti I. These claims, which began as vague recollections, became more detailed as she grew older. Dorothy spoke of rituals, hieroglyphs, and gods with such clarity and passion that it was hard to believe these weren't genuine memories. Her parents were at a loss. They took her to doctors and psychologists, hoping to find a rational explanation for her strange behavior. The experts diagnosed her with everything from an overactive imagination to a possible head injury from the fall. But no one could explain the depth of her knowledge of ancient Egypt, a subject far beyond the grasp of a young child in early 20th century London. When shown photographs of ancient sites, Dorothy would point to specific details and explain their purpose with startling accuracy. It was as if she was seeing a place she had intimately known, not simply looking at a picture in a book. Dorothy's behavior confounded not only her parents, but also the educators who worked with her as she grew older. At school, she excelled in history, particularly Egyptian history, even correcting her teachers when they presented inaccuracies. When they asked her how she knew certain facts, Dorothy would simply reply, "I just know." As her memories became clearer, Dorothy began to describe her past life in more detail. She claimed to have been born as Bentreshit, a young girl dedicated to the temple at Abydos, one of Egypt's most sacred sites. She remembered the grand halls, the towering columns, and the priests who conducted rituals in honor of the gods. But most vividly, she spoke of Pharaoh Seti I, a man she described with both reverence and love. Dorothy claimed to have shared a forbidden relationship with Seti, a bond that transcended her duties as a priestess, but ultimately led to her tragic death. As Dorothy grew into adulthood, her passion for Egypt transformed from a childhood obsession into a lifelong mission. She moved to Cairo in the 1930s, determined to immerse herself in the land she believed had been her true home. By this time, she had adopted the name Seti, which translates to Mother of Seti, a title that reflected her deep connection to the pharaoh she claimed to have loved. While her past life memories continued to guide her, Seti also developed unconventional theories about Egypt's ancient history, particularly the construction of its most iconic structures, the pyramids. Seti believed that the Great Pyramids of Giza were not solely the work of ancient Egyptians. Instead, she was convinced that these monumental structures had been created with the assistance of extraterrestrial beings. She argued that the precision of their construction, the sheer size of the stones, and their alignment with celestial bodies pointed to technology far beyond what was available at the time. In interviews and writings, Seti explained her belief that the pyramids were energy hubs, designed to channel cosmic forces. She spoke of the pyramids as tools for connecting the earthly realm with the divine, functioning as more than mere tombs or monuments. Their alignment with stars, particularly those in the Orion constellation, was deliberate, she claimed, a sign of their extraterrestrial origins. Her theories were met with both fascination and ridicule. Traditional Egyptologists dismissed her ideas as fantasy, arguing that the pyramids were the result of sophisticated engineering and human ingenuity. But Seti insisted that the ancient Egyptians had been in contact with beings from another world, beings who had shared their knowledge of architecture, astronomy, and energy manipulation. Seti's belief in extraterrestrial influence extended beyond the pyramids. She often spoke of the gods of Egypt not as symbolic figures, but as real, powerful entities who may have been otherworldly visitors. In her view, these gods had brought wisdom to humanity and had a hand in shaping the course of Egyptian civilization. To her, the pyramids were proof of a collaboration between humans and these higher beings, a partnership that had left behind structures that defied the understanding of modern science. Despite the controversy surrounding her claims, Seti remained steadfast in her beliefs. She saw no contradiction between her spiritual connection to Egypt's past and her theories about alien involvement. To her, both were part of a larger cosmic truth, a truth that transcended human comprehension but was preserved in the sands and stones of Egypt. As she explored the pyramids and other ancient sites, Seti often spoke of the energy she felt in their presence. She described a tangible vibration, a sense of alignment with the universe that convinced her the pyramids were far more than architectural wonders. They were, in her mind, gateways to other dimensions, relics of a time when humanity and the cosmos were deeply intertwined. While many dismissed her theories as eccentric, others found them intriguing. The idea that the pyramids might hold secrets beyond our understanding resonated with those who believed in the possibility of extraterrestrial life. Seti's unique perspective, rooted in both her past life memories and her mystical interpretation of Egypt's history, set her apart as one of the most enigmatic figures in the study of ancient Egypt. Her theories about the pyramids were just one part of her larger mission: to uncover the truths of Egypt's past, no matter how extraordinary they might seem. For Seti, the mysteries of the pyramids and her memories of Bentreshite were deeply connected, both pointing to a world where the boundaries between human, divine, and alien were not as rigid as we might believe. Dorothy Eades' move to Egypt marked the beginning of a profound and transformative chapter in her life. By the time she arrived in Cairo in the 1930s, she had fully embraced her identity as Seti, the reincarnated priestess from ancient Egypt. Her new life in the land she had dreamed of since childhood was both a return to her past and the beginning of her role as a bridge between two worlds, the modern and the ancient. For Seti, Egypt was not just a country. It was her soul's home. And nowhere was this more true than at the Temple of Abydos, the place she claimed to have lived and served as Bentreshit. Abydos is one of Egypt's most sacred and enigmatic sites. Located near the Nile in Upper Egypt, it was considered the burial place of the god Osiris and a major center of worship in ancient times. For centuries, it had drawn pilgrims who sought to connect with the divine and partake in rituals that honored the cycle of life, death, and resurrection. To archaeologists, Abydos was a treasure trove of historical and cultural significance. To Seti, it was much more. It was her home, the place where she believed she had walked, prayed, and lived in a previous life. Her arrival at Abydos was an emotional and spiritual homecoming. Seti had always described the temple in vivid detail, and when she finally stepped into its ancient halls, she was overwhelmed. She walked the corridors as though she knew them intimately, her hands grazing the cool stone walls. She knelt at certain spots, whispering prayers in the ancient tongue of the priests. To the archaeologists who accompanied her, the scene was both moving and uncanny. How could a modern woman, born and raised in England, have such an intense, personal connection to a site she had never visited before? Her knowledge of Abydos was nothing short of extraordinary. Seti was able to describe hidden chambers, intricate carvings, and details about the temple's construction that even seasoned Egyptologists found surprising. On more than one occasion, her insights led to significant discoveries. One of the most famous examples occurred shortly after her arrival, when she led an excavation team to a specific area of the temple. She claimed that a particular wall concealed a hidden chamber that had been sealed off after a fire in ancient times. The archaeologists were skeptical but decided to investigate. When they removed the stones, they uncovered a small, untouched room containing artifacts and inscriptions that matched Seti's description perfectly. The find left the team in awe, and it cemented her reputation as someone with an almost supernatural connection to the temple. Her intimate knowledge extended beyond the physical layout of Abydos. Seti spoke fluently about the rituals and ceremonies that had taken place there thousands of years ago. She described the annual mysteries of Osiris, a sacred festival that reenacted the death and resurrection of the god. According to her, the rituals were deeply transformative, designed to connect the participants with the divine and remind them of the eternal cycle of life. She spoke of the hymns sung by the priests, the symbolic offerings made to Osiris, and the processions that filled the temple's halls with reverent energy. Her accounts were so detailed that they often matched or expanded upon what scholars had gleaned from ancient texts. One of the most remarkable aspects of Seti's time at Abydos was her ability to interpret hieroglyphs and inscriptions with a depth that astounded experts. While she had no formal training in Egyptology, she seemed to understand the language intuitively, as though she were reading the words of an old friend. She often provided context and meaning to inscriptions that puzzled scholars, offering interpretations that aligned with historical findings. Her explanations were not only accurate, but imbued with a sense of reverence, as if she were not merely studying the texts, but reliving the moments they described. Seti's connection to Abydos was deeply personal, but it was also a source of professional collaboration. Despite the skepticism that surrounded her claims of reincarnation, many Egyptologists came to respect her knowledge and insights. She became an integral part of the team working at the site, contributing to excavations, documentation, and the preservation of artifacts. Her colleagues often marveled at her ability to locate previously unknown features of the temple, from underground passages to forgotten inscriptions. Even those who doubted her spiritual claims could not deny the value she brought to the study of Abydos. Yet, Seti's relationship with Abydos went beyond academic contributions. She believed the temple held profound spiritual significance, not just for her, but for all of humanity. She often spoke of Abydos as a place of power, where the divine and the mortal worlds intersected. For her, the temple was a living entity, a sacred space that resonated with the energy of the gods. She would spend hours meditating in its quiet corners. Communing with the spirits she believed still lingered there. To her, Abydos was not merely a historical site. It was a portal to understanding the mysteries of existence. One of her most striking beliefs was that Abydos contained hidden knowledge about humanity's origins and destiny. She often hinted that the temple's inscriptions held clues about the connection between the ancient Egyptians and cosmic forces, an idea that tied into her broader theories about extraterrestrial involvement in Egypt's history. While these views were controversial, they added an intriguing layer to her work at the temple, drawing both admirers and skeptics to learn more about her story. Despite the acclaim and curiosity her work attracted, Seti remained humble. She often described herself as a servant of the temple, someone who had been given a second chance to fulfill her duties. She saw her role as both a protector of Abydos and a messenger of its wisdom, and she approached her work with a sense of devotion that was almost priestly. Her love for the temple was palpable, and it inspired those around her to see Abydos not just as a site of historical importance, but as a place of spiritual resonance. Seti's time at Abydos was not without challenges. Her unconventional beliefs and claims of reincarnation often drew criticism, particularly from those in the academic community who viewed her as an eccentric or a fraud. Yet, she never wavered in her convictions. To her, the memories of her past life were as real as the stones of the temple, and she saw no need to defend or justify them. "The truth speaks for itself," she would say. And for those who witnessed her work at Abydos, it was hard to argue with the results. Her life at Abydos was a culmination of her childhood dreams and lifelong passion for ancient Egypt. It was a return to a place she believed she had never truly left, a reunion with a world that had shaped her soul across the millennia. As she walked the temple's halls, deciphered its texts, and unearthed its secrets, Seti not only deepened humanity's understanding of Abydos, but also left an indelible mark on the study of ancient Egypt. For her, it was not just a job or an obsession. It was a sacred mission, one that fulfilled a destiny written in the sands of time. The story of Dorothy Eady, better known as Seti, would not be complete without delving into the love story that defined her life across centuries. Central to her identity and mission was her unshakable belief in her past life relationship with Pharaoh Seti I. According to Seti, this bond was not only the key to her memories, but also the force that had drawn her back to Egypt in this lifetime. It was a story of love and devotion, marked by both passion and tragedy, and it shaped the course of her extraordinary life. From the earliest days of her childhood, Dorothy had spoken of Seti I with a reverence that went far beyond historical interest. She described him not as a distant historical figure, but as a man she had known intimately, a man whose presence still lingered in her heart. As her memories of her past life as Bentreshit became clearer, the details of their connection unfolded like the pages of a long-lost diary. According to her, Bentreshit had been a young priestess dedicated to the temple at Abydos, serving the gods with unwavering devotion. But her life took a dramatic turn when she met Seti I, the pharaoh who commanded both fear and admiration. Seti described their first encounter in vivid detail. Seti, she said, had come to the temple on a ceremonial visit. She remembered standing among the other priestesses, her heart pounding as the pharaoh entered the grand hall. His presence was overwhelming, majestic yet kind, with a commanding aura that filled the room. As their eyes met, Bentreshit felt an instant connection, one that she could not explain but knew was real. It was a bond that defied the boundaries of duty, time, and even the rules of the temple. Their relationship, as Seti recounted it, was one of deep love, but also profound secrecy. As a priestess, Bentreshit had taken vows of celibacy, dedicating her life to the service of the gods. Any romantic or physical relationship was strictly forbidden, and breaking this vow was considered a grave offense, punishable by exile or even death. Yet despite the risks, she and Seti could not deny their feelings for each other. They met in secret, away from the prying eyes of the temple priests and attendants. Seti spoke of these moments with a mix of joy and sorrow, recalling the stolen glances, whispered conversations, and the deep sense of connection they shared. To her, Seti was not just a lover, but a soulmate, someone she had known and loved across lifetimes. She described him as a man of great wisdom and compassion, a leader who carried the weight of his people's hopes and burdens with grace. In her memories, Seti was not the distant, untouchable figure of history, but a man of flesh and blood, capable of great love and tenderness. But their love story was not without its shadows. Seti recounted the pain and fear that came with their forbidden relationship. The temple was a place of strict discipline and unwavering devotion to the gods, and any deviation from its rules was met with harsh consequences. Bentreshit lived in constant fear of discovery, knowing that her love for Seti could cost her everything. She described the anguish of hiding her feelings, of pretending to be just another priestess in the temple while carrying the weight of her secret. The inevitable moment of betrayal came when their relationship was discovered. Seti's memories of this event were haunting. She recalled being confronted by the temple priests, their faces filled with anger and disappointment. Bentreshit was accused of breaking her sacred vows and desecrating the temple with her actions. The punishment was severe. Death was the only way to atone for such a grave offense. But rather than face public humiliation and the shame of being cast out, Bentreshit made a heartbreaking decision. She took her own life, choosing to end her earthly existence rather than live without Seti or endure the disgrace of her betrayal. Seti spoke of this moment with deep emotion, often tearing up as she recounted the final days of her life as Bentreshit. She described the sadness of leaving Seti behind, the pain of knowing their love had caused so much suffering, and the sense of unfinished business that lingered even in death. It was this unresolved connection, she believed, that had brought her back to Egypt in her current life. Her love for Seti transcended the boundaries of time. Even in the modern era, as Seti, she felt his presence as strongly as she had in her past life. She often spoke of dreams and visions in which Seti appeared to her, his voice filled with the same warmth and love she remembered. In one particularly vivid dream, she described walking through the halls of the Abydos temple with Seti by her side, his hand resting gently on her shoulder as they spoke of their shared memories. To Seti, these encounters were not mere dreams, but spiritual reunions, moments when the veil between the past and present was lifted. Her love for Seti also guided her work at Abydos. She saw her role at the temple as a continuation of her duties as Bentreshit, a chance to honor the gods and preserve the legacy of the pharaoh she had loved. Seti often spoke of her work as an act of devotion, not just to Egypt, but to Seti himself. She believed that her contributions to the study of Abydos were part of a larger divine plan, one that had been set in motion thousands of years ago. Despite the profound spiritual connection she described, Seti's love for Seti was not without its challenges in her current life. Many people found her claims difficult to believe, and she often faced skepticism and ridicule. But she remained steadfast in her convictions, refusing to let doubt or criticism diminish the depth of her feelings. "Love doesn't die," she would say. "It crosses lifetimes, transcending the boundaries of time and space." In her later years, Seti often spoke of her impending death as a reunion with Seti and the life she had left behind. She believed that her soul would return to the temple, to the sacred halls of Abydos, where she would once again be with the pharaoh she loved. To her, death was not an end, but a homecoming, a chance to finally complete the story that had begun thousands of years ago. Seti's love story is one of the most compelling aspects of her extraordinary life. It is a tale of passion, sacrifice, and the enduring power of the soul to connect across lifetimes. Whether seen as a historical impossibility or a deeply personal spiritual truth, her bond with Seti remains a central theme in her story, offering a glimpse into the mysteries of love, memory, and the eternal nature of the human spirit. For Seti, love was not confined to the present. It was a force that wove through the fabric of existence, uniting her past and present in a tapestry of devotion that defied the limits of time. As Seti entered the final years of her life, the extraordinary tale of her existence, a life lived between two worlds, began to solidify into legend. Her remarkable story, shaped by her unwavering belief in reincarnation and her profound connection to ancient Egypt, had captivated scholars, spiritual seekers, and casual observers alike. Yet her legacy was far from straightforward. Was she truly the reincarnated spirit of an ancient Egyptian priestess? Or was she simply a woman whose deep passion for Egypt created a fantastical narrative? For those who knew her, the question was less important than the undeniable impact of her life and work. Seti's later years were spent in quiet devotion to her beloved Abydos. Having moved to a small, modest house near the temple, she lived simply, focusing her energy on preserving the site and sharing its mysteries with visitors. Despite her humble means, she was immensely content. To her, living near Abydos was not just a fulfillment of her lifelong dream, but a continuation of her spiritual mission. She believed she had been given a second chance to serve the temple and the gods, and she approached each day with gratitude and reverence. Visitors from around the world came to Abydos to meet Seti, drawn by her reputation as the enigmatic woman who claimed to have lived two lives. Some were Egyptologists, eager to consult her on the intricacies of the temple's layout and inscriptions. Others were spiritual seekers, hoping to find guidance or validation of their own beliefs in reincarnation. Many were simply curious, intrigued by the stories they had heard about the woman who seemed to know Abydos better than anyone else. Regardless of their reasons, nearly all who met her left with a sense of awe. Seti's warmth, humility, and undeniable knowledge left a lasting impression on everyone she encountered. Her days were often spent walking the temple grounds, her footsteps echoing through the ancient halls. She knew every corner of Abydos, every inscription and carving, as though they were old friends. She spoke to the spirits of the temple, offering prayers and whispers in the ancient Egyptian tongue. To her, the temple was alive, a sacred space filled with the presence of the gods and the memories of those who had worshipped there. She described feeling a deep, almost magnetic connection to the site, as though the stones themselves recognized her. Seti's knowledge of Abydos continued to astound archaeologists. Despite having no formal training, she was able to interpret hieroglyphs, identify artifacts, and guide excavations with an accuracy that baffled even the most seasoned experts. Her insights often led to significant discoveries, from hidden chambers to previously unrecorded inscriptions. One of her most famous contributions was her prediction of a tunnel beneath the temple, which she claimed led to a chamber containing sacred texts. While the chamber has yet to be fully explored, the discovery of the tunnel validated her claim and reignited interest in her unique abilities. Yet Seti's life was not without its controversies. Her unorthodox beliefs, particularly her theories about extraterrestrial involvement in ancient Egypt, drew skepticism and criticism. She often spoke of the pyramids and other monuments as products of a collaboration between humans and higher beings, entities she believed had guided the development of Egyptian civilization. These ideas were dismissed by mainstream scholars, but they resonated with those who shared her fascination with the mystical and the unknown. Seti herself was unfazed by the debates surrounding her claims. She cared little for public opinion, focusing instead on her work and her spiritual connection to Egypt. To her, the truth of her story was self-evident. She often said that she had no need to convince anyone of her past life memories or her theories about the pyramids and the gods. "The proof is in the stones," she would say, gesturing to the walls of the temple. For Seti, the ancient sites of Egypt were living testaments to the truths she held dear. In her final years, Seti often spoke of death as a return to the divine. She believed that her soul would reunite with the gods and the world of ancient Egypt, completing the journey that had begun thousands of years ago. Far from fearing death, she welcomed it as a homecoming. "I'm not afraid," she once said. "I'll just be going back to my real life." She spent her last days at Abydos, surrounded by the temple she loved. Her thoughts focused on the gods and the memories that had defined her life. When Seti passed away in 1981, at the age of 77, the loss was deeply felt by those who knew her. She was buried in a simple grave near Abydos, in the land she had devoted her life to. Her tombstone, marked with her name and dates, bore no mention of her extraordinary story. Yet, for those who visited her grave, the air seemed charged with the same sense of mystery and reverence that had surrounded her in life. Her passing marked the end of a remarkable life, but it also solidified her legacy. Seti's story has continued to inspire and challenge the way people think about history, spirituality, and the mysteries of existence. For Egyptologists, her contributions to the study of Abydos remain invaluable, even as her claims of reincarnation remain controversial. For spiritual seekers, her life stands as a testament to the possibility of connections that transcend time and space. In the years since her death, Seti's story has been the subject of books, documentaries, and countless debates. Some view her as a visionary, a woman whose unique experiences opened a window into the mysteries of the human soul. Others see her as an eccentric, someone whose passion for Egypt blurred the lines between memory and imagination. Yet, even her skeptics cannot deny the impact she had on the study of ancient Egypt or the depth of her connection to its history. Her life raises profound questions about the nature of memory, love, and the soul. Was Seti truly the reincarnation of Bentreshit, a temple priestess who lived thousands of years ago? Or was her story a reflection of a mind deeply immersed in the wonders of Egypt? The answer, like the secrets of Abydos, may never be fully known. But perhaps that is part of the allure. Seti's story is not just about the past. It is about the enduring mysteries of existence and the connections that bind us to something greater than ourselves. Even today, visitors to Abydos speak of feeling her presence, as though her spirit still walks the temple's halls. For those who believe, Seti's life is proof that love, devotion, and the human soul are eternal, capable of crossing the boundaries of time and space. For others, her story is a reminder of the power of passion and imagination to shape a life of extraordinary meaning. In either case, Seti remains an enduring symbol of the timelessness of the human spirit, a figure whose life continues to inspire wonder and curiosity long after her earthly journey has ended.